This content includes graphic imagery that may not be suitable for young audiences. Content includes gore, aggressive deaths, foul language, nudity, drugs, sexuality, etc. By continuing, you acknowledge that you are responsible for your mental health, and the risk you are taking by watching this content. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, a quick brief warning before we continue this presentation. I would like to tell you that hell can be quite an awful place, full of terrible and unforgivable things that no human should ever witness. In this particular episode there are some suggestive themes that of course some of you pathetic humans cannot handle. So for those of you who are snowflakes and pussies, please excuse yourself from this video. You may continue your review.
Hello everyone, hope you like my new look. I've been working really hard to look nice, but I really despise this jumpsuit the devil gave me.
Well, I think it looks lovely on you.
Firstly, it looks like a Christmas outfit. Secondly, I think it looks ridiculous. Thirdly, and most importantly, green is my least favorite color.
Well, I think it looks good on you.
Whatever. So everyone, we're going to be looking at part 2 of House of Velez, and it's safe to say everyone was excited for this part to finally release. And I'll have you know that I was excited too, but I do however think there are still some problems with part 2, but there are some improvements that have been made. Now, before I do begin this review, there are a few things I'd like to discuss. Firstly, I like to say that in my last review that I didn't intend for myself in any way to sound like a person expecting some big complex game. I know I may have seemed harsh in my first review, but I wanted to be direct and concise as possible to explain why that part wasn't as good as it could have been. Secondly, as I review this part, I want people to understand that I am not asking for any spectacular complex game. I can appreciate a game that doesn't offer that much. Hell, my favorite game of all time is Primal, and that game isn't even as good as Silent Hill, Fallout, Resident Evil, Alone in the Dark, etc, etc. People can enjoy simple games, but only when they're done right. Thirdly and finally, as I make comparisons, please do not misunderstand me in believing that I'm saying that game I'm talking about needs to be as good as the one I'm comparing it to. When I compare something, I'm comparing it to the simple mechanic of that game or product. I'm not comparing it to say it should fit the overall aspect of the whole entire game. Now with all that stated, I think it's time we begin this review. So let's start off with the good stuff and the good news. And oh wait, before I forget, check out my review of part 1 in the description if you haven't seen it already. Now we can talk about the good stuff. Death scenes are the one thing about this entire game that's the best part. I like to say that this guy truly deserves a reward for making such amazing death scenes. It's amazing how much work went into these death scenes. It's incredible because you don't see too many games have the balls of steel to do something like this. Unlike part 1, part 2 is far more brutal, going as far as to have needle rape and literally birth to a scavenger.
Be quiet.
God damn it! Let me out of here!
Be quiet.
Please continue.
Call forth the most vile, twisted, destructive things into existence. What comes back out? The scavenger. You will come to appreciate it, my dear.
Some of these deaths are a little beyond fucked up, but I respect that. I give a reward for this, but I really don't have anything to give. The animation is the same as part 1. The animation is pretty good for a low budget game. There's a lot of detail in the facial expressions, the movement, and basically everything else. Now for the gameplay and story, there has been some added stuff, not a lot, but some. Gameplay wise, the heart suppression mode now shows danger spots, which I think is kind of cool. There are some pretty cool puzzles as well that I thought were very creative. And the story does finally have explanations on Lily's past stressed about trying to commit suicide and getting raped by her therapist and then perhaps having an abortion, which would probably explain all the babies and all this weird type of shit that involves babies and all that crap. But unfortunately, kids, we gotta end the party here because we have to talk about the problems now. So of course, if most of you guys have seen my part 1 review, you would know that Lily isn't necessarily golden material when it comes to her development. What I mean by this is that Lily never has any character, she never develops, and most importantly, I in the audience cannot have a connection with her or even sympathize with her. And if I'm being 100% honest here, I didn't feel sorry for her at all.
How dare you?
Damn girl, and I thought I was brutally harsh.
Look, can I please just explain myself real quick? The only thing I'm trying to say is, well, not to sound brutal, but Lily kinda sucks as a character. And it's at this point that I would like to thank dear creator for giving a very well written comparison between Fiona Ballet from Haunting Ground and Lily Velez. As stated in his comment, Fiona from Haunting Ground has a more innocent and beautiful appearance, whereas Lily just doesn't have that. Unlike Lily, Fiona does indeed have a personality where she comes across as more innocent, and as dear creator states, in the game of Haunting Ground, the players take on the responsibility of looking after Fiona Ballet. Unlike Lily, she owns a distinctive appearance which makes Fiona look innocent and beautiful. Fiona's comments throughout the game make her a likable character. We know that she's compassionate towards animals, Huey. We know that she likes the piano and arts. We know that she's fragile like glass, giving us a reason to like her. Hence, when you get killed by the enemy, you feel like a total shithead for letting that happen, giving you a reason to not die. Lily is the opposite. There's no reason for you to keep her alive because of how boring she is, so we kill her because the budget went to the death scenes. Thank you, dear creator, for a wonderful, well-written comparison, but seriously, even in part 2, where there is some backstory of Lily, she still never develops. It's a shame because the voice acting from Sandra Espinosa is really wonderful, and yet, even though she makes Lily seem so real as a person, it's gone to waste because, again, Lily just doesn't have a character. And I would like to emphasize this ideal that Lily just isn't human by showing the full clip of Victor Velez and Lily in part 1.
There you are, my dear. No! I've been looking for you. I was beginning to think I had run out of options, Lily. And just when I lose all hope, you show back up. Beacon in the night, signifying my freedom from this place, this hell. You have no idea how much you mean to me, my sweet. This is it, Lily. This is my freedom. No. They're here. You have to die.
So I apologize for not emphasizing just how bad this scene really was before in my part 1 review, and I really had to agree with Andrew attempts with the fact that this just doesn't seem real. I mean, come on already. If that was my grandfather trying to kill me, I would plead so fucking hard for my life. It's almost as if Lily doesn't give a shit about what the fuck is even happening. No wonder Lily sucks as a character, and why some people probably didn't get this game. Characters are the most essential aspects of any game, and unfortunately, it seems like no work was put into actually developing this character at all. I mean, it seems like Darkroom Games was trying to make Lily seem innocent by making her self-comfort herself, but she also seems a bit of a miss obvious at times.
For Christ's sake, what else could possibly happen? I'm not alone in here. Okay, Lily, you can do this. Just move slowly.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. I'm pretty sure the audience knows that too. But let's tackle the gameplay and story, and the overall experience all at the same time. Gameplay-wise, the heart suppression mode did not improve, and if it did, I certainly couldn't tell. So if you're one of those people who haven't mastered it yet, well, good luck with that shit. However, if you've mastered it like I did, the experience of the gameplay kinda gets a little bit boring because you start to realize there could be something more to this. As I stated earlier, I think the added danger spots were cool, but they aren't really that much of a threat, and even if it was put into safe places, people would just keep the heart suppression on the whole time, and you kinda know the rest that would happen. It kinda baffles me and confuses me a little bit that the creator of this game keeps saying to people in the comment section not to go into this for gameplay, when the fucking game has a stealth mechanic, puzzles, hiding spots, and literally QTE. If Darkroom Games was really going to have a game not about gameplay, then I'm surprised he didn't do what The Path did. You know, that game, The Path. Okay, for those of you who don't know what The Path is a literal walking simulator, meaning all you do is walk around and interact with stuff. This was very interesting because you play as 6 girls with different ages going through different times of womanhood. But I'm sure you're all telling me, but Alisa, you just said in part 1 that it was boring and lame, wandering around and interacting with stuff. You did indeed say that it wasn't worth it and it was shit. Yes, I did say that. And so now all of a sudden you're saying that The Path is better? That makes no sense. Actually, it does. And that's the thing about The Path. It actually knows what the fuck it's doing, whereas House of Velez doesn't.
Those are some fighting words towards the creator of this game.
Yes, they are. Go ahead and fight me, but I can guarantee you probably won't win though. See, unlike House of Velez, where it has to worry about fixing gameplay issues and whatever else is related to gameplay, The Path, however, doesn't need to worry about this type of stuff, because it only has to worry about storyline and characters. Lily never says anything interesting about objects and just analyzes them, whereas in The Path, the girls do indeed see the exact same objects as the other girls would, the difference being they don't just analyze the object, but rather put their own characteristic charm about that item. Not to mention the fact that there's so much to theorize about what may have happened for all of these girls to die. Therefore, games like this are so much better than House of Velez. Hell, I would argue that Day Shift at Freddy's is a much better game too. And of course, some of you are going to say, oh Anissa, you're just into stupid parody games that make you giggle and laugh like a child. You can't appreciate games like House of Velez like the rest of us adults. No, that's not true.
It probably is true.
No, it's not. Believe it or not, Day Shift at Freddy's does have a good lore, and yet was free, meaning you didn't have to pay shit for it. All the characters have really good fun personalities that engage the audience even more. Sure, it doesn't have the very detailed death scenes or animations or whatever else was very detailed in House of Velez, but it's just as entertaining, if not more entertaining, than what we've witnessed in this game. My favorite game of all time, Primal, has a great character dynamic between Scree and Jen. The point is, House of Velez just doesn't give us enough time to process the situation at hand. So when we see these past events of Lily, we can't really feel anything because it's too fast, and doesn't show enough footage for us to process anything. I mean, we already know that the whole story by reading all the notes from Victor is that Victor's father tried to bury away the artifact, but Victor's curiosity got the best of him, and I'm sure you can imagine the rest. It would seem that the monstrous entity at the end of the game is behind all of this terror. I guess basically the entity just wanted to torture people and see how much they could break. I mean, there was something in the ending where like there was some contract which was explaining why Victor put some ball inside of Lily, which is why she had those stitches. The reason Victor did it was because he had to pass on the torture event or whatever the hell you call it onto his own child in order for him to have a merciful death or something. I really forget. To be honest, I kind of was blinking out at the ending.
That is it. That is the story.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much the whole story. And of course, Lily gets pregnant at the end for some reason, but I'm guessing it was her boyfriend. I mean, that's just my theory. We never see her boyfriend come visit her in the hospital, which is pretty damn ironic since he is her boyfriend. It's all explained in Victor's last letter if you get the good ending. I mean, I like the story, I didn't mind it. However, I do kind of believe it could have been betterly presented in some way.
Well, I have a better story.
Satan, no, don't do this shit.
Silence, child. Now here's my story. The Velez family is a family of monsters who have a strict culture that is hidden from the outside world. In this story, the artifact is the soul of their god sealed in it. The reason for this is that another clan of monsters are against the Velez family because of their species and culture. The Velez family are known as shapeshifters who live as outcasts and worship the god of eternity. While the other kind of monsters we see Lily get killed by are known as Deathbringers. They worship the god of death. The artifact is the god of death sealed inside it. The shapeshifters stole it, in the hopes of destroying it. It became obvious that it would not be an easy task. So of course that is when the god of death takes over the house. The culture of shapeshifters is not pleasant. Lily was supposed to be the mother of the god of eternity's son.
Okay, but what the fuck even is this story?
Pay attention, child. But Lily has not been living up to her parents' expectations, which causes her to be depressed. Thus, after she is raped, parents find out the unborn child must be rid of or they will gladly torture it once born. The relationship between Lily and her father is a love/hate bond. Victor is too hard and a little abusive toward his daughter, but shows a good deal of love. And of course, the god of death wants to kill Lily so that she will not survive and give birth. Story time is over. Go back to your review.
Wow. Well, not bad. I guess, actually, I kinda like that story a little bit more than the game version. Of course, in which I absolutely hate to do, but Satan has a point with his story, since there's so much you can do with it. But the overall experience wasn't that bad, but if I could, I would tell people to just skip part 1, because it literally adds nothing to the story, and it feels completely pointless, but you have no choice but to play it so that way you can play part 2. It's just a shame that the main villain, such as the artist, who is also voiced by Sandra, doesn't get a chance to really flourish as a villain. Like, why is she even an artist to begin with? And even though the artist is very well acted, I just think she doesn't get the time she deserves. But the real victim here is Victor. Poor Victor, man. He literally had it bad. You only see him for a few scenes and bam, he's just dead. I wish he could have shown his humanity before dying at least. I mean, his letter at the ending was really deep and sad. However, the sad feeling doesn't even last that long after you read it. At least games like The Walking Dead knew how to make people like me depressed. There are literally 2 endings. The bad ending consists of not having all of Victor's notes, which really aren't that hard to find. And by having all the notes gets you the good ending. The endings of the game weren't too bad. They certainly didn't feel rushed, but I think more could have happened though, especially with that one good ending. I mean, how the fuck is Lily not expressive? Like, come on now. I mean, the good ending had Victor's last note, which did explain some things, but the overall expression of Lily seeing her father dead was the most ridiculous thing. Lily, your father is fucking dead on the fucking on the fucking table. He's naked. He's literally dead with a fucking machete in his chest. If that was my grandfather, I would be sobbing like a fucking baby. I'm sorry, I would. I mean, he does try to make Lily seem expressive, but the problem with it is that shouldn't she be sobbing and crying and being all depressed? If I had to go through all the shit Lily has gone through, I would feel like fucking trash. I mean, but here nor there, whatever. All the note talks about is Victor feeling guilty for his actions and other stuff about feeling like a terrible father and a terrible husband, and how Lily ran off with some guy she met that for some reason couldn't see her in the hospital. And some people have theorized how Lily may have gotten pregnant in the end, but honestly, I just think she had sex with her boyfriend. Honestly, if it was me directing this game, I would have made so many changes and improvements. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to explain how you can make this game better. So without further ado, I introduce to you the House of Velez recreation. Every game has a theme, whether it's about greed, overcoming the fear of death, etc, etc. I feel like this game doesn't have a theme, so let's talk about what could be the theme. And it doesn't need to be some obvious thing of learning a valuable lesson in the most, cliche way possible. I personally think the theme of self-guilt and self-forgiveness works well for Lily's character, because here's the problem. Lily isn't expressive enough. In the beginning of the game, Lily should come across as a cold hard ass, but presented in a way that isn't dislikable. For example, the scene with Victor should have been her point to express all of her emotions towards him in a brutal way. After Victor hears that, he begins to gain his humanity again and tries to apologize for everything, but Lily tells him she could never accept him and take his apologies or forgive him, and wishes for his death. Thus he dies. We witness the most brutal death of him, and Lily's just in shock. As she exits, her back is on the door. She's shocked, but in a few seconds, tears drop down immediately, but she also immediately wipes them off and gains her composure again. Also, with the backflash scenes, Lily committing suicide should have had more scenes, like show her parents' disappointment. And if we're going off the devil's story, then what could have happened is that maybe you see her parents abuse her and you see them talking so shit to her about how she's just a disappointment, and maybe one day she goes downstairs and hears her parents talking and saying maybe if she wasn't born she wouldn't be such a failure to us, and then we see her commit suicide. And I personally believe that you should show the therapist raping her. It would cause a lot more shock. Letting Lily just stand there watching this whole scene happen, you can see her trying so hard to keep her composure without crying. Then have the artist belittle her. Now you know how some people talk down to you, you get depressed, but Lily should be the opposite. She sees these insults as a challenge to prove her worth. I kind of personally believe by adding all of these details would make Lily a bit more sympathetic, and straight after the artist leaves, maybe we should still hear our young self screaming from being raped, and then the walls have oozing vaginas that are bleeding, and etc etc. It just brings the shock value so much. Then with the walking Lily dolls, there should be like a mini boss or something like that looks broken and just is insane. The first time you meet it, you only see the back of it, but of course Lily is hiding. As it turns around to see its front, it looks so broken that you can see its broken heart and soul, and there's a baby inside of its womb. It then violently rips it out and stomps on it. You see Lily trying really hard to keep her composure, but she's definitely crying a little. Then at that point you cut to black. We hear voices of Lily and her parents talking about how it's an abomination, but Lily wants to keep it. Then at that point cut back to the gameplay, and if for some reason if the player gets caught, the thing is a giant compared to Lily, so it kind of grabs her and it would slowly rip out her womb. And by the way, you can't skip the death scenes if you got them the first time. Now, that would have made people feel terrible, but those are just some ideals of what could have been to make it a lot better. Also, I think the bad ending should have gone more of like, do you guys remember God of War 3's ending? So you know the QTEs that are in here? Maybe for some reason the artist just goes way too far and you're just mashing the QTE, and if you keep mashing it just continuously you get the bad ending, but if you stop you kind of get the good ending. I think it would kind of go on the idea of that if Lily wants to move on, she has to let go of her hatred and learn to forgive herself for what she's done. But enough of recreating this game. I'm sure you're already asking me, is this game worth the $10 or $8 or something? Well, that really depends on the person. Yes and no. I won't say a full no because I think people should definitely at least give it a try. And I won't say a full yes because I kind of think that there could have been something more to this. And I think it's time to conclude this part by saying I give it a 6 out of 10. It's slightly better than part 1, but I think it still needs work in some of the major areas. I do indeed think this game could have been a lot more enjoyable with the ideals that I presented, plus the introduction to this game was not the best from part 1, it really just wasn't. So Darkroom Games, I think you need to take more time to actually develop the more important parts of your game. Now, to be really clear on something before I end this video, I want people who are going to tell me that I'm being way too harsh on a guy who made this by himself to understand something. Believe it or not, Darkroom Games ain't the first one to be a one-man stand. There has been plenty of others that have been one-man stands and have done better jobs than House of Velez has done. I mean, look at Day Shift at Freddy's. That was made by Direct Doggo, and that game turned out great. House of Velez may be a good start, but all of it really is just a bunch of great ideas and concepts, which is really a shame because I've always said, what's the point of having great ideals if you can't execute them to their fullest potential? I mean, what's weird about it is that you have all of these monsters and whatnot, like that monster lady with the arms and shit. I legitimately thought that was going to be a representation of Lily's mom or her siblings or something, but none of these monsters have any real psychological meaning to Lily. They're never really explained it's never explained what they mean to Lily. And oh shit, I fucking forgot. Darkroom Games, I would like to thank you so much for giving me a key to your second part. I sincerely apologize for not seeing it sooner, as you should know that my personal life has been really busy at work. But it's okay, you don't have to worry about trying to compensate me for any of that. It's perfectly fine, but I thank you so much for giving me a message on Facebook, but it's been kind of recently that I just checked it, so I apologize for not getting back to you. But I think this concludes this review. I dissected the fuck out of this game. I gave ideas to make it better, so yeah. So what do you guys think? Did you love this game? Or do you think it sucked ass? Or are you like me where you like it a lot but thinks it just needs a little something more to it? So I'd like to say thank you all for watching this review. I hope all of you were waiting for this are satisfied now. So I just want to say have a good day and be sure to leave a comment down below what are your thoughts about this game.